U.S. President Donald Trump looking to achieve in the war on Iran? Jack A. Goldstone, he is a Virginia E. and John T. Hazel Jr. Chair Professor of Public Policy at George Mason University. Professor Goldstone, he joins us live from Arlington, Virginia. We're speaking to our correspondent there, Professor Goldstone. A distinct lack of enthusiasm to the U.S. call to join in and help keep the Strait of Hormuz open. A failure in
Well, you may recall, yes.
Sorry, do continue.
Yes, you may recall that President Trump's attitude toward allies has always been, we don't need them, they need us. We're the most powerful country in the world, and therefore allies are a luxury that had cost us money in the past. We're not going to make that mistake in the future. Well, that was fine when the U.S. was not at war. Now that we need our allies, they are uncertain what to expect. Will they get a change in Trump's attitude? Will he start to be more welcoming of his allies? Or will he go back to his adversarial position in which he was threatening Greenland and throwing tariffs at anyone he disliked? That's not a position that wins you strong allies.
So reflecting a lack of planning on the U.S. part, in contrast to immaculate planning on Iran's part.
That seems to be the case, yes. I wouldn't say there was a lack of planning on the part of the United States. The Pentagon is very good at developing plans for all kinds of extraordinary circumstances. But I would say that the U.S. rushed into this war without preparing to implement all the plans that might be needed. I believe the assumption, and this is borne out by statements made by Senator Chris Murphy, I think the case is that there was so much confidence that Iran would simply buckle under the impact of the enormous U.S. bombing campaign that Trump felt there was no need to get ready for what to do if Iran would react. He simply felt the war would be over in a matter of days. You may recall that Trump already declared, we have won because we've destroyed their air force, we've destroyed their navy. But as we've learned, Iran had plans for other means of attack. They had well stocked on drones, possibly on mines, and they were prepared to take steps that would attack and hurt their neighbors. They were prepared to close the Strait of Hormuz. And we, the United States, really were not prepared for what to do next if our initial attack did not cause the regime to crumble or surrender.
It's not just military targets. If Iran, as it now does, is targeting the global economy, that's a target the U.S. cannot militarily defend.
It's a difficult situation for President Trump now. He believed he could win a quick victory and that the war would be contained largely to Iran, perhaps Iran and Israel. And of course, Israel, he was certain, could defend itself. The U.S. had supplied many of its allies in the Middle East, such as the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, with interceptors, but certainly had not prepared them for the idea that they might be engaged in a long war against a very aggressive Iran. In fact, most of them tried to discourage America from starting this war precisely out of fear that this could happen. But now the United States does not want to back down. We don't want to make a deal with this new, very hard-line militarized regime. But if we don't make a deal, it's hard to know what comes next. What military actions are necessary to reopen the Strait of Hormuz? Do we have the assets in place to do that? Not yet. Will we be able to do that eventually? Yes, but perhaps at a very high cost.
And if the regime in Iran was hardline before, and we spoke to you end of January, and you asked that question, the question is, why does the IRGC support the regime at that point under Ayatollah Khamenei Sr.? And now he is dead, his son has taken over, and those who might have been more moderate, according to Donald Trump, were killed in that strike on the 28th of February. So you're looking at an even more united elite regime in Iran.
Yes, well, what the United States should have learned from its experience in Iraq and Afghanistan is that unless you have a popularly supported alternative government waiting to take power, it's dangerous to decapitate a regime. The result is either chaos or a harsher, more militarized regime that arises in response. And in Iran, we really weren't prepared with a strong opposition in place. The opposition in the form of protests had been building, but there was no organization, no national leadership that was actually ready to rule if the government fell. Now, that might have developed over the coming months, but by attacking Iran, the United States has essentially forced the government, forced all the different factions in the leadership to unite, and has even reinforced the patriotism and the desire of those in the militia, those in the military, to support the government against its foreign adversaries. The opening that we had, where it looked like there were factions, there were arguments about who would succeed Khamenei, there were growing popular protests that were starting to resume. All of that is now over. We're in a different situation where the government and increasingly even the Iranian population feel that they now need to fight to survive. And as long as they face that threat, the government is in a strong position.
As a final question here. So this strike has ironically made it even less likely for regime change from within in Iran. Final question.
In the near term, that's true. In the longer term, all of the problems of a failing economy, difficult arguments over what direction Iran will take in the future, those remain. The popular discontent and hatred of the clerical regime, that remains. But in the short term, as long as the war goes on, we have reinforced every reason for the government to hold together and survive. And we've reinforced reasons for the people to remain watchful, but not yet to act against their own government. Their own government, after all, right now, is the only thing that is working to achieve a settlement, preserve Iran's sovereignty, and to fight off these foreign enemies that Iran has been battling with for decades. Instead of offering a kind of attractive, incentive-filled off-ramp, we are trying to punish Iran into changing, and that very rarely works.
Thanks for joining us this evening, Professor Jack A. Goldstone, Virginia E. and John T. Hazel, Junior Chair Professor of Public Policy at George Mason University.